Foro IDEAMOS Movilidad Sostenible e Incluyente, donde se darán a conocer los resultados de los 8 proyectos experimentales que conforman su plataforma e iniciativas para la mejora de la movilidad en la Ciudad de México.
Hola, buenos días. I'm going to be speaking in English. I hope that's okay. My Spanish is not so good, so pardon me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you here today. I know that we have been partnering with so many of you and with ITDP for the last 3 years on some really interesting projects. So it's really wonderful to be with all of you here for the next couple of days to talk about what we've done and what we've learned and where we can all go together in the future. Sorry, I have my back to you. I want to set the stage for the conversations for the next couple of days. As most of you probably know, ITDP is a global nonprofit organization. We've been around for more than 35 years now, and our mission is to promote sustainable and equitable transportation around the world. And we're doing great work here in Mexico, but we have offices all over the world in Brazil, India, China, throughout Africa, Indonesia, and as a world, we are all learning together and sharing best practices. So fundamental to what we are doing at ITDP is the recognition that urban populations are growing around the world and are expected to double by 2050. And it's interesting to see Mexico here on the map, which is, as we know, already a very urban population. With the growth of populations in urban centers, we also see more and more cars on the streets. More and more people are turning to the use of private vehicles to move around the world. And here you see some interesting data that was put together a few years ago by Bloomberg. And each of these circles shows the number of vehicles that is on the road. And if the circles are moving up, that's expected growth. If the circles are going down, that shows a decrease. And we can see here that the number of cars in Mexico is already quite large. The circle is quite large, but the expectation is that the vehicles will actually go down, which is really wonderful to see, but I think that depends on a lot of great policy and a lot of great technology and choices. I think it also has to do with the demographics of Mexico and the change of demographics in the country. So hopefully we can make this true, because fewer cars on the road means a more sustainable, equitable lifestyles for all of us. So unfortunately, as we have more and more cars on the road, as we all know, that means increased congestion. And this is a photo from Los Angeles, which is where I am from, Los Angeles, California, where there are many, many cars and way too much traffic. I think it's very similar to being here in Mexico City. And unfortunately, many people around the world spend 2 or more hours in transportation every day, and most of that time is often wasted sitting in traffic. So we all know that terrible feeling of sitting around waiting in traffic. So it's a loss of time, it's a loss of value for all of us. But also, it's terrible because it is leading to an increase in emissions. You may know that transportation is one of now the largest sources of emissions and air pollution around the world, and it's one of the fastest growing sources of emissions. So it's something that we really need to get a handle on. And of transportation emissions, most of that comes from road transport, passenger vehicles, and freight transportation. But again, it's the private vehicles that are the fastest growing source of emissions and air pollution. And when we think about the emissions, it's important to think about all of the pollution that comes out of vehicles. Some of that contributes to climate change, which we know is a more and more urgent crisis around the world. But some of those emissions also are air pollution, and they create a lot of problems for health. And the people that suffer the most are usually people with low incomes. And so not only is this important for the environment and health, it's also an issue about making sure that we have fair and equitable cities for the most vulnerable people. As we also know, the climate crisis, climate change, is leading to more disasters in our cities, whether it's fires or droughts or floods like we see in this picture. This was from one of the big hurricanes in Texas. I think the first hurricane that caused so many floods, where people really started to understand that the climate crisis was real and that it is having a significant negative impact on our infrastructure, especially our transportation and building infrastructure in cities. So we need to do something about this, and we need to do something about this very quickly. We need to reimagine our cities for resiliency. And when I see this photo, this was a rendering that was done about 10 years ago. And I looked at this picture, and it's actually a picture of India. But when I looked at it, it really reminded me of Mexico and Mexico City. There's so many green streets, there's people on bikes, there's bus rapid transit and public transport. And this is what the city of the future looks like. We don't see congestion, we don't see a lot of cars, we see many other alternatives, and we see a lot of greenery in our cities. So we're here for the next 2 days to really reimagine our cities for the future. So I want to share with you a little bit of analysis, a study that we did at ITDP in partnership with UC Davis. This is called the Compact City Scenario Electrified. And what we did was look at what is it going to take to meet our 1.5 degree climate goals. And our big question was, looking at technology, and especially the increase of focus on electric vehicles, how far can we get with electric vehicles? Can we get to our climate goals, or what is it really going to take? So we looked at 4 scenarios. One, as you see here in the left top corner, is business as usual, if we change nothing. Another scenario that we looked at in the top right-hand corner is, what if we just electrified all of the vehicles? Only electrification. In the bottom left-hand corner, we looked at a scenario that was, what if we did no electrification, but we only focused on compact city development, walking, cycling, and public transportation? I'm going to move over here. And then the last scenario that we looked at down here at the bottom right corner was, what if we electrify all of the vehicles and we also focus on compact city development, walking, cycling, and public transportation? And what we found was the only way to get to our 1.5 degree scenario, our targets, was the combination of looking at electrification as well as compact city development, walking, cycling, and public transportation. So we know that in the circle, the middle circle, is our carbon budget, the amount of emissions that we can emit to stay within our 1.5 degrees. And you see that it's only this scenario that was within that middle circle. To look at it a different way, these are the lines each represent the amount of climate emissions in the air. And the blue area is the area that we need to stay under in order to meet our climate goals. Business as usual is the red line here. And again, we can see that the only way to stay within that blue area is to have an approach that combines electrifying our vehicles, but also policies that keep our cities compact and dense, and a focus on walking, cycling, and public transportation. So what does that mean for our cities, for our urban landscapes? This means, again, that we need to make sure that we're building our cities, that we're setting policies that encourage people to not depend on private vehicles, that we have plenty of space for people to walk safely, to cycle safely, that we are continuing to invest in public transportation with metros and buses and bus rapid transit systems. It also means that we need to do things to discourage people from driving. Things like parking policies. Mexico City has done a really great job implementing parking policies to make it difficult to park your car. If it's easy to park, you jump in your car, no problem. But if it's difficult to find parking because parking is limited or the price of parking is high, then you think, should I drive? Or maybe I should take the bus, or maybe I should take the metro instead. So policies like parking can really encourage people to not drive, but instead take public transportation. And then we need to make sure that public transportation is electrified. Instead of focusing on private vehicles, we need to make sure we're investing in electrifying our public transport because that benefits everyone. We also need to think about new ways we can avoid emissions and pollution in our cities. And low emission zones are one way that many cities are trying to create small areas that grow and grow where only clean vehicles and zero emission modes are allowed, like walking and cycling. So we see cities like London and Paris implementing approaches for low emission zones. I know that was something Mexico City was considering, and I hope that they will implement low emission zones in the future. So to translate that into some deep analytics, you can see that on the right-hand side by 2050, what this really means is everybody has a choice to move around freely, but instead of a lot of private cars, instead we have more bicycles, more walking, more electrification. The great thing about this is not only is it good for people and air pollution and emissions, it also allows us to save a lot of energy. And we all know that moving to green energy is very expensive and very time-consuming. So if we use the high shift electrification approach, we can save 40% of energy globally, which is a huge number. We can also save $5 trillion annually by 2050. And we all know that we need to help our government save money so that we can invest in schools and healthcare and other things. We all here are here for the next couple of days to talk about technology. And technology is so important to help us scale these approaches. Very importantly is digitalization. When we use our phones to figure out where we're going, our phones are collecting information on us, and that data can help for planning and policies. So now that we have digitalization, we have so many new options to us for scaling, and I know we will be talking about that the next couple of days. So technology can help, but it's so important that we understand that policy must drive technology in the right direction. Each of these pictures all has technology. the same technology, but the difference is how much of one technology we have versus another, and it's policy that must drive technology in the right way. I often get questions about whether technology is good or bad. Technology is good if we make sure that it is used in the right way. So again, I look forward to talking about technology in these next couple of days, but so fundamental for all of us to also think about the policies that we need to support to make sure that that all moves in the right direction. So looking forward so much to the conversations for the next days, and thank you so much for being here.